I'm Alexis. I teach grade 2 at Crofton House School. I started my teaching career actually in public systems, so I know both sides. I started teaching grade 6, 7 mainly for 4 years, and for the past 2 years I've been teaching grade 2 at Crofton House. And you will see that Lindsay is here, but not here. Due to some personal reasons, she wasn't able to come today, but Lindsay and I did a practicum together about 7 years ago. It's been a while. We remained really good friends. We did our masters together, and we ended up doing our graduating paper for our masters collaboratively, which is really unusual to do something that significant or that big as a team. And this is what we did our masters on, critical literacy, and we specifically chose to focus on picture books, so I'm here to talk to you about that today. I think that most of you as teachers will probably recognize that our job as teachers isn't simply to give our students factual information and to get them to regurgitate this. Lindsay and I definitely believe that it's important for students to be able to critically engage with the information that's being presented to them. So whether this be on the internet, in textbooks, in picture books, in the media, in conversations with other people, we want them to be able to have a critical perspective and engage with it in a meaningful way. And so while we were doing our masters, we learned about the many ways that teachers use picture books in their classrooms. We also learned a lot of theories. But one theory that we kept coming back to was critical literacy theory. And critical literacy theory suggests that students and people can be empowered to critically engage with texts or books being presented to them. And this is something that we found really interesting. So critical literacy theory suggests that the world presents us with social constructions, and these social constructions are not necessarily right or wrong or true, but because we come across them every day, so often we don't even think about it, and we take them for granted that they are true. So some of the issues that might come up might be issues around immigration, the environment, poverty, or gender, and by being empowered to critically look at these issues, you recognize that there isn't a right or wrong. So for example, when it comes to gender, there's many ways of playing out gender, to be a boy or a girl, or to dress like a boy or a girl, or to act like a boy or a girl. But social construction sort of suggests that girls have to dress a certain way, and boys have to dress a certain way. But there's nothing really biologically true about that. You're not born liking pink or wanting to have long hair. These are social constructions. So Lindsay and I thought this is really interesting. It's something we kept coming back to. However, we're elementary school teachers, and to us this was really just theory. Like how were we to bridge the gap between this theory and turn it into actual practice in our classrooms? So this is something that we went on to explore and do our research about. So some examples of what critical inquiry might look like. We turned to teacher researchers that were actually using a critical framework in their classrooms already. And they suggested that kids as young as 5 were able to deconstruct social constructions and texts that were being presented to them in everyday life. So this is an ad that I found on Google. Ironically, it's about Mother's Day. That wasn't the plan. But it's an ad for laundry detergent. It says, "Every day is Mother's Day." So I would say that there are a lot of powerful social constructions being presented to us in this, and you might just flip through it and not even think about it. And the idea with critical literacy is that you are empowered to sort of deconstruct what's being presented, and how are you being presented in this picture. So asking questions like, who is this text for? What's the message? Does this text reflect your household? Because it probably doesn't reflect everybody's household. And whose voice is not heard in this text? So, being informed by this critical literacy theory and our background as elementary school teachers, we tried to come up with a framework that would really help us tackle some of these topics, these issues that maybe come up in class. So I'm just going to go through these very quickly, but I can definitely talk to you later about specific examples. So some social justice issues that may come up in your classroom include immigration and colonization, gender, xenophobia or fear of the unknown, ignorance, war or dealing with death, environmental awareness, animal rights, poverty, bullying, self-empowerment, morality, issues of good or bad and what that means, racial or social prejudices, and I'm going to give you some examples of how we do this. So what we did is we came up with a framework that uses picture books to sort of facilitate these critical skills. And there's a couple reasons why we chose to use picture books as opposed to a different tool. Firstly, we think that picture books are something that a wide variety of learners and readers can access. So whether you have emergent readers in your class or stronger readers or ESL students, picture books sort of lends itself for a variety of learners and abilities to access. Mainly because of the two modes. So that's the second reason why we picked picture books, because picture books, you're not reading just the words, you're also reading the images, and you're able to get a lot of meaning from the two of them simultaneously. And the third reason we picked picture books is because they are accessible to most teachers. Most schools have a big picture book library. You don't need to invest a lot of money in it in terms of training. Most teachers feel comfortable using picture books. So that's another reason why we chose to use picture books. And the teacher researchers did say that this should be done with all texts. So not just limited to picture books, but things like the internet and media. However, this is what we chose to focus on. And these reasons for picking picture books also sort of influenced our criteria for how we select our picture books. So we pick picture books that allow a wide range of readers to access them. We also pick ones that are multimodal, where you have to read the pictures and the words at the same time, like a graphic novel. And then the final reason, which is probably the most important, is that they deal with social justice issues that are important to the students. And this is really important with critical literacy, that you're not picking something that you specifically are interested in. It's not a unit to be taught. It's something that you have to pick up on with things that come up in your classroom. So I'm going to give you some examples of how I used critical inquiry, critical literacy in my classroom, specifically looking at gender. I teach at an all-girls school, so issues about gender come up all the time, literally on a daily basis. And these are little comments that you could quite easily skate over. For example, I saw a boy crying yesterday at the track meet. You know what? Boys cry, believe it or not. So where do these ideas come from? Why do people perceive boys or girls to behave a certain way? So, in my classroom, I was doing lessons on inferring. We were making inferences on a wordless picture book. And the girls were sharing their ideas with me, making their inferences throughout. And there was in the book, it's about a child who plants a seed. The seed grows up into a tree. And all throughout this book, the girls were like, oh, it's a girl, the character's a girl, it's a little girl. At the end of the book, it kind of reminds me of the Giving Tree. The tree's grown up and you see the child grown up to be a man. And so I asked them, well, what made you think that this was a girl throughout the book? What gave you those clues in the book and what made you infer that? And they said, oh, well, because the child had long hair. And because the child was gardening, girls are usually into gardening, girls have long hair. And so that made me ask, well, if girls usually have long hair, does that mean boys can't have long hair or girls can't have short hair? Because our principal's a girl and she has short hair. And so they were sort of puzzled by this notion of what it means to be a boy or a girl. And just from this conversation that we had, I knew that they were very, very experienced in playing out gender-specific identities. And I thought that was really, really interesting. So I went to look for a picture book. This is one that I heard about in my master's degree. That sort of lends itself to talking about gender in a more meaningful way, and something that would really challenge my students to think about what does it mean to be a boy or a girl, and how do you play out that gender role. And being a boy or a girl, you're not born liking pink or wanting to wear dresses. These are social constructions, and there's other ways to play that out as opposed to how you sort of formed your ideas. So this book is about a child named Bailey. Bailey is biologically a boy, but identifies more as a girl, and she's very interested in dresses. Bailey shares this idea of her liking dresses with her parents. Her parents don't support her in this, specifically not her dad. So I read the book, or I handed a sheet that looked like this out to my students. You probably can't see it, but there's a picture of Bailey in her sparkly envisioned crystal ball gown. And I wanted my students to do an OWI chart, so observe, make inferences, and then write some questions down. So I was handing this out. Before I had finished handing out all the papers, literally every child had asked me, is this a boy or a girl? Can I draw a hair on this girl? Is that girl's hair in a bun? Why does the girl have spiky hair? So these were the comments that they were making before I even finished handing out the papers. And already they went to gender without me having to bring it up at all. And they were already showing me some very strong points of view they had about what it meant to be a boy or a girl. You'll see here that this child wrote, I infer he's crazy because boys do not wear dresses. I infer he's a boy. So these are some ideas. So I said, okay, wrap it up. We're going to go to the carpet and read this book. And by that time, they were very, very curious already about what this book was going to be about. So I started reading. The book goes something like this. Bailey had a dream. In her dream, she dreamt of blah, 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 blah. And I knew it was a girl. The book continues. The next day, Bailey went to her mother and said, I had some dreams about dresses. Can I have a dress like this? And Bailey's mom responds by saying, Bailey, you're a boy. Boys don't think about dresses. And my students were, what? Why did it say she when Bailey's a boy? And so we had a big discussion about this. Why would the author write, was this a typo? These were some of the comments that they were making. And then one of my students put her hand up and said, I think that the author wrote she because the author wants us to know how much Bailey feels like a girl. And I thought, wow, for a 7-year-old, that is a powerful statement. And that's the idea of this, that there are multiple ways to play out gender, and a lot of the ways that we see in the world around us are just social constructions. It's not necessarily true. Just to wrap up this activity, they found it very easy to label Bailey's parents as being bad guys and Bailey as the good guy, and it's not about bad or good or right or wrong. So we looked at why wouldn't Bailey's father want him to necessarily be interested in girlish things or dresses. And so these were some of the comments that they made. He was embarrassed because he thinks boys shouldn't be wearing dresses, but I have a friend who's a boy and he likes pink, and that's sort of the same thing. He wants his son to grow up big and strong, and he wants his son to believe girls are weak. He wants girls to like his son and they won't if he wears dresses. And finally, maybe he's worried and wants to protect his son because he doesn't want him to be bullied when he gets older. So this is their thinking of why a parent wouldn't want the child to be interested in perhaps a non-dominant social construction. Just to finish off, this is just one example of something that's come up. Lindsay teaches grade 4, and out of her 29 students in her class, 24 of them are brand new to Canada. So a lot of issues that come up in her class are about immigration and multiculturalism and fitting in. And so I really encourage you to find books that deal with the social justice issues that your students bring up, because the discussions will not be as meaningful otherwise. I also recognize that picture books are not the end-all. I'm not trying to just get them to be able to deconstruct things that are happening in picture books, but the idea is that through critical inquiry with the teacher, they're able to analyze and critique everyday texts like the media and the internet and all these other things that their worlds are saturated with. That's it. Thank you for coming. Any questions?
So we have 5 minutes for questions.
Do you have somewhere where we can access those books?
I think my email's inside the little package. You can totally email me. I can send you a list. I have a whole bag full of books if anybody wanted to browse them. Some of them are really hard to come by. One that I got about immigration is out of print now, and the one in the VSB mysteriously went missing. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you go, I really like the idea of doing that, but how do you go knowing what questions to ask? Critical, sometimes it's hard to come up with a critical question.
I think that a lot of it is just like what your students come up. Like I didn't really need to say, well, do you think this is a boy or a girl? They kind of led that already, and it was more about pushing them to question their beliefs. Like, why did they think that was a girl because it's wearing dresses? Well, who told you that girls have to wear dresses? Where did you get this idea from? And it is really crazy to see how deeply embedded these social constructions are in their minds by age 5, 6, 7. So it's coming from TV, it's coming from their families, their parents, the school, books that they're reading, it's everywhere. And just getting them to recognize that.
Have you make them feel safe, like for an open discussion about the book without sort of trying to not let them make rude or disrespectful comments.
That's the thing, this is not something that I would do as a TOC or without really knowing my students. It really is about creating that safe environment beforehand so that they can engage in it and sort of, I guess, wear their heart on their sleeve. I was hesitant about using this book for sure. I work at a private school. I thought about talking to my principal about it first, but I didn't. I just went ahead and did it. And it turned out to be amazing, and it was some of the deepest conversations we'd had all year. So I think that you have to know your students and to be able to pick up on those little things that they make comments on. Like Scholastic. We hand out Scholastic, and last month it was, oh my gosh, I'm so excited because this is so girly. Well, what do you mean by girly? Well, look at all the sparkles and it's purple. And just like things like that that you could easily skate over, but you have to make time in your curriculum for it. So, yeah.
Have you encountered any resistance or concern from your school or parents or?
No, they're quite excited. There's a couple parents at Crofton that work in LLED, which I didn't even realize. So they're very supportive, but I know that Lindsay, working in the public system, has had not just parents but other teachers and their staff that just do not believe that the world presents us with social constructions. And yeah. Did you have another question?
I forgot it actually.
It's all good.
I got really interested in what everyone else was saying.
Okay, no problem. Well, like I said, if you wanted to know any of the resources, I definitely have those.